Welcome back, everyone, and get ready for the next epic chapter. We're diving straight into part 2 of the times of my life, tracking my family's incredible and continent-spanning journey all the way from the hills of Scotland to the rugged American frontier. To bring this amazing saga to life, I have chosen to present the narrative in a storytelling style. You may be surprised to know I was not present for the events described. I have devoted considerable effort to gathering and verifying the facts. However, I must acknowledge that I cannot provide first-hand testimony for these occurrences. My intent is to share the history as accurately as possible, woven together with the understanding that my perspective is shaped by research rather than direct experience. It's a powerful story of resilience, and I can't wait to share it with you. If you like this series, please click on the like button and even the subscribe bell. Thank you, and enjoy the story. Part 2, Chapter 3, The Deep Gap. The war's end brought a quiet that was, to Benjamin, more unsettling than the conflict. The coastal plain was scarred, the air still thick with memories of treason, and the humidity that rotted everything, wood, cloth, and he feared the lungs. He was 36, and the humid climate that had felt like a shroud when he arrived now felt like a grave. Elizabeth, a woman of the colony, was restless too. She saw the land, once rich, now exhausted by tobacco and trampled by armies. The call was not a voice, but a pull. It was the talk from traders and returning soldiers, stories of a land to the west, a high, vast, and empty country, where the air was sharp and the water ran clear. They spoke of the Blue Ridge, a great wall of mountains that reminded Benjamin of the stories of his own ancestral highlands, a land of ghosts he had fled. Perhaps he thought a man could find a new beginning in a place that looked like his old one. He and Elizabeth made their choice. They sold what little they could, packing their remaining life into a single sway-backed wagon. They owned a plowshare, an axe, a rifle, an iron pot, and Elizabeth's spinning wheel. Tucked in an oilcloth packet were Benjamin's Bible and their marriage papers. They had 1 ox, 1 cow, and the seeds of a family. Their firstborn, Edmund Leroy, was a babe in Elizabeth's arms. They turned their backs to the Atlantic and faced the continent's heart. Their 250-mile migration was not a journey. It was an ordeal. The Great Wagon Road was a glorious name for a wretched track of mud, stumps, and misery. They did not ride, they walked. Benjamin walked at the ox's head, his voice, which had once recited Greek, now reduced to a constant stream of hup and gee. Elizabeth walked beside the wagon, one hand steadying the infant at her breast, the other ready to brace the wheel against a sudden lurch. They averaged, on a good day, 5 miles. The road was a slow-moving river of humanity. German-speaking families from Pennsylvania heading south, other veterans seeking bounty land, all of them hollow-eyed and wary. But mostly, the Blackburns were alone, the screech of their ungreased axles the only sound for hours. The Yadkin River was a monstrous, swirling brown snake. There was no bridge, only a ford marked by the drowned carcasses of a less fortunate wagon. It was here Elizabeth's knowledge surpassed Benjamin's education. While he prayed, she directed, stuffing the wagon bed's cracks with rags and tallow to make it semi-waterproof. Benjamin led the terrified ox into the current. The water surged, grabbing at the wheels. The wagon groaned, tilted, and for one heart-stopping moment, it seemed the river would claim them. Benjamin roared, a sound torn from his Scottish gut, and put his shoulder to the wheel, feeling the mud suck at his boots. The ox found its footing, and they lunged onto the far bank, soaked and shaking, but whole. Weeks later, they reached the Blue Ridge escarpment. It was not a gentle slope, it was a wall. The road became a rocky, vertical path. There was no choice. They unloaded the wagon. For 3 days they became beasts of burden. Benjamin and Elizabeth strapped their worldly goods to their own backs and began the ascent. He with the plowshare and axe, she with the spinning wheel's parts and her child. They scrambled over rock, hauling themselves up by grasping roots, and made the agonizing trip again and again. The wagon itself had to be disassembled, wheels removed, the bed emptied, and hauled up in pieces. As they climbed, the world changed. The humid air of the coast fell away. The air grew thin, sharp, and cold. Benjamin stopped, breathing heavily, and for the first time in a decade he smelled it, the clean, piercing scent of pine and damp rock. It was the smell of Scotland. He looked at Elizabeth, her face streaked with sweat and dirt, and she smiled, sensing his peace. He had left a land of ghosts only to find them waiting here, not as tormentors, but as guides. They found their place in the Deep Gap section, a high valley carved between two peaks. There was no church, no town, not even a neighbor for miles. There was only the forest, a silence so profound it was almost a sound. Benjamin's first act in Ashe County was not to preach a sermon, but to fell a tree. His hands, softened by books and prayer, were torn open, blistered, and bloodied. He learned the agonizing work of splitting logs, of notching them, of daubing the gaps with mud and moss. Elizabeth's world became a constant battle. She planted corn and beans in the small clearing, her rifle always leaning against a stump. The cries of wolves and the scream of a panther were their nightly vespers. She defended their single cow as if it were a third child, knowing their lives depended on it. It was in this raw, beautiful, and dangerous isolation that their family truly took root. Inside the one-room cabin, Elizabeth gave birth to John, then Levi Morphew, and finally their daughter, Sarah Sally. The children grew up tough, speaking with their father's Highland lilt and their mother's colonial pragmatism. To this day, there are clear signs of his presence in the hills of North Carolina. His children sank their own roots deep into that mountain soil. Many of their descendants were instrumental in establishing the Methodist Church throughout that region. It's a legacy that endures. The Blackburn name remains prominent in Ashe and Watauga counties to this day. For me, the connection is personal. Edmund was my great-great-great-grandfather. When my wife Sandy and I visited a few years ago, we were delighted to see that legacy thriving. We found the Blackburn name on roads, schools, and 3 local churches. In the local general store, we were introduced to numerous residents who shared our last name and racially diverse family branch I was proud to meet. A true inheritance is not found, it is built. Benjamin's story shows that the most enduring legacies are forged in hardship. He was called to a place with no church, no town, and his first act was to build, not to preach. His legacy. If you're enjoying this journey into the past, please let me know by hitting that like button. And to make sure you don't miss the next chapter of the adventure, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Thank you so much for your support.
couple set in motion, with baby Edmund small as he, to the hills of Carolina, with their packs upon their